Okay, I'm back and I'm ready to go. Let me turn on the camera here so you guys can see. And I've got to readjust this thing every day for the ah. So every day I have to adjust this thing to try to make sure the whole whiteboard is in view. So I'm going to first go over questions that you have on 2.3. That was mainly understanding how to find the mean, median, and mode of a data set. And we're going to kind of review that anyway today as we move on into the next section, which is the measures of variance or variation. So let me get my other device, my laptop going here. So that I can look up the questions that you have, if you have any. Okay, so did anybody have a particular one from section 2.3 that you'd like for me to go over? Diamond?
It was question 10.
Okay, great. So let's look at question 10 on the 2.3 homework. And I'm not going to share my screen and do it. I'm just going to pull it up on my laptop and look at it and work with you from there. So mine might be a little bit different. And on this one, it says determine whether the statement is true or false. And if it's false, write it as a true statement. And I think we talked about this last time. Data set can have the same mean, median, and mode. And that is true. You can have, for one thing, if your data set, if all the numbers were the same, it would have the same mean, median, mode. So yes, that's definitely true. Is there another part to that one? Oh, no, that's number 1. I'm so sorry, Diamond. You said number 10, didn't you?
Yeah, 10.
Sorry. Okay.
That's all right.
Yeah, I didn't talk about weighted mean, so that's a very good question. I didn't talk about weighted mean the last time. Weighted mean is very much like GPA, which is relevant to all of us who are in school, GPA. So, and GPA is an example of a weighted mean. So this is a very applicable thing. On this one, when I look at mine, it says the scores and the percent of the final grade for the statistics student are given. What is the student's weighted mean score? So basically what they've done is, so do you see how they have like a homework score, 2 quizzes, a project, and a final exam? Is that what yours looks like, Diamond?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and we have a thing like this too. Why don't I show you how to compute it with mine, with your real numbers, and then you'll do this one the same way, okay? So with ours, we're going to have a homework average, and its weight is 20%. So I'm going to write it like they have problem 10 written for you, okay? And then we're going to have a quiz average, and that's also 20%. And then we have a test average, that's 40%. And then we have a final exam, and that is 20%. I think that's how it's divided out. I don't have my ICR in front of me. I do it different for different classes, but let's assume that this is the way, I think this is the way I do it in this class. And so what you would do for each of these, let's suppose at the end of the semester, you ended up with say a 90 homework average and a 100 quiz average, and let's say you ended up with a 75 test average. I'm trying to be like what a typical student would be, although a lot of people do have higher and lower test averages. And let's say on the final exam, this person ended up making a 70, okay? So do you see that this looks very much like that problem 10? So what you're going to do is you're going to change these percents. These are in percent form right now. And that's the way they have it on there. What you're going to do is change those to decimals. You never compute with a percent form. A percent form is just a look good thing. So anytime you're wanting to compute numerically, then you always change that to either a decimal or a fraction. It's really easy to change it to a decimal because you just move the decimal point back 2 places. So we're changing that to a decimal. So for example, on number 10, do you see the one on mine? It says quizzes count 5. That quiz count, each quiz counts 5%. Do you see that? Well, you're different. But if it says 5%, you're going to change that to 0.05. All right? Then you're basically going to do this multiplication across. And it's kind of like saying, how many points do I get for that? So on this one, so do you see how you would do that particular problem? Just basically change those to decimals, and you're going to take each grade and multiply it by the decimal of its worth. So you see, for example, this 75 is going to count a lot more, isn't it, than these other things. Now remember, if I listed the 3 tests out individually, that would be different because each individual test would count less than the homework average because there's 3 tests in there. But this is the way I set it up in Blackboard, just so you know. This is how I compute your grade, actually. So I would do the 90 times 0.2 and kind of think of that as that's how many points I get. And then 100 times 0.2 is going to be 20. 75 times 0.4 is going to be 30. So kind of think of this as this is how many points I'm going to get for that, for my total grade. And then 70 times 0.2 is 14. And then to get your final answer, to see what the fight is, you're going to add these things up. So I have the 14 plus 30 plus 20 plus 18 is an 82. And that's basically the formula I use for computing your grade at the end of the semester. So you can do this at any time. When like today during the break, I'm going to put in your homework and quiz average. I don't have this stuff yet. But I'm going to put in your homework and quiz average. And notice they are both equally weighted, each weighted 20%. So what that means is, right now, if that was your homework and quiz average, because they're equally weighted, you have a 90 to 100, so the average would come out at 95 because they're equally weighted at this point. When I put in a test after you take test 1 on the 21st, when I put in test 1, then that will become test 1 by itself will become your test average. And I'll talk more about that later. But even though it's only one test at that point, it would be 40% of your grade. Because at that point, it is your test average. And then as you take more tests, your test average will change. So hopefully that helps you with that. So,
yes.
Yeah, so see, that problem really isn't very hard. It's a different kind of mean. So you see that's different than just adding up the grades and dividing by 4, right? So we didn't just add these 4 things up by 4 because they were weighted differently. And that's why it's called a weighted mean. So we have to multiply by their weight and then add that up. And that gives us the grade. Okay? Great question.
Thank you.
Kayla.
So, okay, so since we're doing like the percentage, like we're changing the percent to decimal, for the last question, since it's like a 3 credit, 4 credit kind of deal, do we change those to decimals too?
No. I know what you're talking about. That one's more like a GPA, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
So let's look at that one because I would imagine some of you are interested in how to compute your GPA. So what we just talked about was how to compute your grade in this course. So I think it's a value to learn how to do a GPA. So let's look at that one. I'll just copy the one down that's in mine. And you have to read this question carefully because it's a little tricky in my opinion. So it says, a student receives the following grades. So I'm going to make sort of a chart. And if you want to do, this is the last question, guys. This is number 11, just so you'll know, in 2.3, number 11. And it's going to give me a grade, and then it's going to give me how many credits it's worth. And then it says it wants to know what's the student's weighted grade point score, which is GPA. So on my question, and yours will be a little bit different, it says a student receives the following grades. And then it tells you an A is worth 4 points, a B is worth 3, a C is worth 2, a D is worth 1, and an F is worth none. And that's the way our grade point system at TCC is. Most schools have this grade point system. It says, what does the student's weighted mean? So look at the first thing. Mine says they made a B in 3 2-credit classes. That's why you have to be careful with this. A B in 3 2-credit classes. That's actually 3 classes. That's 3 Bs, and each of them were 2 credits. So that's what I think is tricky about this. They earned an A in 1 class that's worth 3 credits. So you have to read this carefully. I wouldn't have written it like this. So you have to read it carefully and say, okay, it looks like it's 1B, but when you read it carefully, it's actually in 3 different classes. So I put down 3 Bs, and they were worth each 2 credits. Then an A in 1 class, then a D, mine says, in 1 2-credit class, so there's 1 D, and then a C in 1 class that's worth 3 credits. So I forgot who was asking that question. Kayla, right?
Yeah.
So Kayla, do you see how this was the tricky part, is I had to know that there are 3 Bs there, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's tricky. So now what you're going to do is you're going to figure out how many grade points they earned. So remember, Bs are worth 3. So all of these Bs are going to be worth 3 grade points. Remember, the A is worth 4, the D is worth 1, and the C is worth 2. And then you're going to multiply. So the answer to your question is no, you don't change this to percents, because these aren't percents, these are how many credits are.
Okay.
Okay, so, and I am going to do that multiplication. So in that respect, it's kind of similar. What weights them differently on this is not the percentage, but the number of credits they're worth, which is just a number.
Okay.
So I'm going to get 6, 6, 6, 12, 2, and 6. Now when I add those up, so I just did these multiplications, guys. So I did the value of the grade times the number of credits for each class, and I had to be careful with this because they told me there were actually 3 2-hour classes in which the student made Bs. The student took a lot of classes. So one thing I should say about that is when you take a lot of classes, that's when you risk this here. That's when you risk a low grade, because you just don't have time for all those classes. So I did those multiplications. I'm going to add those up. What's that going to add up to? So that's 18, 32, 38, I believe that adds up to, if I added right. You guys can double check on me.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what you're going to divide by, you have to divide that. So your GPA is total grade points out of total credits. So we have one more step on this. We have to take those total grade points and divide by the total credits. So the total credits were 2, 4, 6, 9, 11. This person took 14 credits total. This is your total credits. And with those 14 total credits, they earned this many total grade points. So when I do the GPA over here, I'm going to do the total grade points divided by the total credits. And this problem says to round to the nearest tenth. So after I do the division, 38 divided by 14, I get 2.71. It told me to round to the nearest tenth. That means I only need to take it out 2 places, and I'm going to round that to 2.7. Now, I'm going to leave this up here for a second because this one's a little bit more complicated. And those of you who, I'm going to check roll and let you guys work on this number 11. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. If you have a question or something, you can come on and turn on your mic. But go to number 11 on 2.3 and see if you can follow this. So you're writing the grades for all the classes, being careful on the one that says, there's probably one in there that says two credit class. You have to count how many classes they have. So on mine it said a B and 3 2-credit classes. That's 3 Bs that are each worth 2 credits. So I'm going to leave this up here so you guys can try to follow it. And then here's our calculation over here on the right. I'm going to leave that up there for a while so you guys can take a few minutes to work on that. If you have a question, you can raise your hand or talk into the mic, and I will check roll. And Kendra, I see you have a question, so let's deal with that.
Okay, so when you're writing, I was trying to focus on it, but with the students taking turns, it's really hard to see the blackboard or the board that you're writing on.
Can you see it now? Okay, I know
I can see it now, but yeah, with the other
Okay.
students are talking it.
Okay, so what you probably need to do is we need to get you off the screen where you see the other students. So if you can, where it says, do you see where it says 15 attendees in a black thing? And there's a little circle to the right with 3 dots in it. So my thought is you need to, when I'm doing an example, you need to make sure it's showing me on the full screen and not anything else. And the way you're going to do that is up there where it says 15 attendees. And then there's a circle with 3 dots in it. You're going to click on that circle.
Okay, so after I click on that, and then
You're going to merge panel. There's an option that says merge panel. Okay, and I'm going to show you another thing that you can do too.
yeah, I don't see that one. The merge panel.
When you click on this circle here with the 3 dots, it should give you some options. I think it gives you 3 options. It says find attendee, merge panel. Another thing you can do, Kendra,
I
if
don't
that's
see it on. I only see find attendees.
okay, then look down. Do you see down at the bottom? And I'm going to draw this at the bottom. Down at the bottom, there's a wheel looking, or you could maybe it kind of looks like a flower. And if you click on that, we may have to change your settings. When you click on that flower, that'll go to your settings, and you can go to notification settings. and click off. It says someone posts a chat message, or you can click off these settings. You're going to have to, someone raises their hand, click off these settings so that they aren't distracting to you. So look at your notification settings and your session settings, mainly the notification settings, I think. I think that's the big thing you need to look at. And click off all the notifications. So go to notification settings. And some of them will have a little green check. Click those off. And that should help. And when I'm at the board, make sure that it's on the full screen, that you're seeing me on full screen. You might have to click on the little picture down in the corner to get me to be full screen. Or I think you have an option of follow the instructor. And I'm not sure where that is because I don't have that option on mine. Could someone remind me where that follow the instructor option is located? Those of you who have done that. Natalie, do you know where?
It's in the top right-hand corner. They look like little squares.
Is it the one that looks a little kind of like a monitor sort of thing?
For me, it's just in the right-hand corner, and it just kind of has you in
On the
like
top?
on the big screen the whole
Natalie,
time.
is it the top right-hand corner?
Yes.
Because I don't have it. Okay, so Kendra, in the top right-hand corner, there's apparently some squares, and you can click on them and choose to follow the instructor, and then you won't see the people when they talk. So I would change my notification settings. Click off all the notifications. I don't know about you guys. When I first started using this, I was in a session, and every time someone joined or every time somebody chatted, it was popping these things up, and it was really distracting. So the way you change that or get rid of it is you go to the notification settings on this little gear or flower and click off. You don't want any notifications. And then what Natalie was saying is up in the upper right-hand corner, there's some squares. And among the, if you click on those squares, it gives you the option to follow the instructor. So those are two things you want to do. Turn off the notifications and choose on those squares to follow the instructor. Okay. Mia, did you have a question?
Man. Yeah. So I just wanted to know if we could take the test before the 21st. Would it be open before that or no?
It's going to open for you on Saturday, which is it's going to open for you. Okay, so it's due on Monday the 21st, but I will open it on Saturday the 19th. However, you will have to take it in one setting. I will talk more about the test later, though, okay? Because we're going to go over all the things you need to do to take the test. And one of those things, actually, there's two preliminary things, and that is you need to take the proctoral practice quiz, and you need to send me a copy of a picture ID by email. Those two things you need to do prior to test one. But we'll talk more about that later. But yes, Mina, it will be open for a couple of days, and you have to take it in one setting. You can't take part of it and then come back later. So you'll be given like 2 hours to take it or so, and you will have to take it in one sitting within those 2 hours without taking a break.
Okay.
Does that help?
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do we have I'm in the process of checking roll here. So Mia, I got you. Let's see, when I call your name, would you raise your hand and leave it up? Ariana? Cecil? Diamond? I know Diamond was there a minute ago, so Jacob? Kayla, you asked a question, so I know you're there. Go ahead and raise your hand, though. Kendra, I know you're there. Christina, are you there? Layla. Mia, I know you're there. I already marked you. Natalie. Natalie, you answered my question. So let's see, who else? Samira. Let's see, who have I? Stephanie. And Temperance. Was there anybody whose name I did not call? Okay, you can put your hands down. Thank you. Let's talk about one other thing while I'm looking at attendance. You know, I told you I'll put your homework and quiz average in Blackboard during the break today, so you'll be able to see it. Another thing, some of you have let my Math Lab account expire. So if you let it expire and did not pay for it, you're not going to be able to access it to do your homework. Also, what you will see in Blackboard right now for your homework and quiz average will be zeros. So if you have a 0 on homework and quiz average right now, that's because when your account expires, your grades don't download. And so you don't have anything. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. Okay, I see a few hands up. Do you guys still have questions? Kendra, do you have a question? Let me get out of the way here.
Okay, so Blackboard with the quizzes on or lab. What was that? Can you explain that again about the quizzes and the averages? How that works?
I'm gonna put your homework and quiz average in Blackboard during the break today. You'll see it. You'll see it sometime during the break on Blackboard in my TCC. You'll see it after the break. If you don't see it, let me know.
Okay.
Natalie, did you have another question? Or Ariana, your hands are up. There you go. Okay. Okay, guys, so that was really good question about weighted mean because I had not shown that. Sometimes I put this type of question on a test or a quiz, but and I mainly put it in your homework because I think it's important because you should be able to do your GPA. Sometimes being able to compute your GPA is a huge help. So just like a little story, my son had to keep a certain GPA in order to keep his financial aid, and his GPA dipped below one semester. And so, but he had over the summer to bring it back up in order to get the money. And it was a lot of money. So we had to figure out how many classes he has to take and what grade does he have to make in them in order to get his GPA up. So we worked together and figured out, okay, if he takes this class, that'll give him this many hours. And if he makes this grade, that'll give him this many grade points. And what we figured out in the end was that he needed to take one 3-hour class, but he had to make an A in it. And so, and this was at UTA. So we've basically looked for a class that he needed, but would be fairly easy because he was in engineering. And he took it and made an A in it, got the GPA, and everything was good, and he got his money. But in that case, being able to compute GPA was financially important to us. So you just never know. He's graduated now and has a real job and is married. All right. Kendra, do you have another question before we go on?
Yeah, I had a question about the GPA with students getting financial aid. So
That was just my son. The financial aid, he was on a scholarship at UTA, but he could only keep the scholarship if he kept a certain grade point average. So most financial aid isn't really dependent on you keeping in an A or a B. It is dependent. You do have to pass a certain number of your classes. So you should always check with financial aid to see if you have to keep a certain GPA or if you have to, about dropping. There are things that can affect GPA, but you should check with financial aid with that, because I won't know what your financial aid is dependent on. Okay?
Okay, so do they have a limit for GPA for financial aid? Do you know?
Just check with Kendra, just check with financial aid and they'll tell you the requirements for your financial aid if you're on financial aid. That goes to all of you. If you wonder, what do I have to do to keep my financial aid, you should check with that office, because that's not my area of expertise. Check with the financial aid office and they'll tell you. All right, so we're going to go on to measures of variation, but I thought before we did that, we'd take a little example and just do the measures of central tendency with it, the mean, median, and mode. So I'm going to make a little example, because the next things we're going to do with it are a little more complicated. And I don't say that to scare you, but of all the things we do this semester, I'm going to tell you in advance, the measures of variation are probably the hardest. So we're like doing the hardest thing here at the beginning. Most of the rest of the stuff we do is not nearly as hard as this. But first, I want to go over the measures of central tendency with you. I think I'm going to put it over here. Let's just have 5 numbers, and I'm going to make them easy numbers, okay? So we'll make grades just because we're used to that. Let's say we have, and I'm going to put them in order. So 60, 75, 82, 90, and 99. Let's say I had, let's make 2 of them the same so that we'll have a mode, okay? So I'm going to give 2 90s here. Otherwise, we'll have no mode. And let's talk about the mean, median, and mode for this set, just as a review. So first, for the mean, remember, the formula is I take the sum of the x's and I divide by little n if it's a sample. I call it big N if it's a population. So for this question, when I find the sum, I find that by adding the grades up. So 60 plus 75 plus 82 plus 90 plus 90, and that gives me 397. So that's this number. So that's what goes on top. And I'm going to divide by n. On this one, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So on my example, n is 5, because I have 5 data values. So I'm going to take 397 and I'm going to divide by 5. And that gives me 79.4, which is already one place past the data. The data is whole numbers. So this came out even to 79.4, and there's the mean. And since this was a sample mean, it would be X bar, sample mean. So everybody was able to find the mean, correct? I have these data values in order, which means the middle number, and since there's an odd number of numbers, I can see this is the one that's in the middle. So that's the median. So the median is 82. Every data set is going to have either a middle number, or if it has 2 in the middle, you're going to average them. And by the way, if any of you are having trouble making the board be the full screen, if you watch the recording later, on the recording, it will be full screen. It does that automatically. Okay. Then the mode is the easiest one, especially when you put them in order, because you'll look for a number that's repeated. So here I have two 90s. That's more than anything else. So the number that occurs most, which is the mode, is 90. Any questions on that? I'm going to leave that up there because we're going to need the mean down here. This mean, we're going to need that in order to do some of the measures of variation. So I'm going to draw this. It's going to reduce my space over here, but that gives you that example. This is from the stuff we did in 2.3. All right, so in 2.4, we're doing measures of variance or variation. Okay. When we talk about variance or variation, we're talking about how much the numbers vary, how spread out they are. With measures of, these are measures of central tendency, and they're more about the middleness of the numbers. In fact, the median is the middle. So measures of central tendency are about the middleness of the numbers. Measures of variance has to do with how spread out the numbers are. So we're going to say measures of variance are like measures of spread. And we have 3 of these. And the first one is very easy, and that's range. And we've already talked about range because we needed to do the range when we were doing class limits on the frequency distribution. To determine the class width, remember we did the range divided by the number of classes. And so we've already talked about this. The range is the high value, the highest value, minus the lowest value. So let's just take this example that we have here. And we're going to do these things for this example. So for our example, the range would be the highest value is 90 minus the lowest value is 60. So the range would be 30. So that one's easy. We've done that before. No big deal. The second one is the one that's a little bit hard. And it's actually called variance. Now, what I want to show you is the formula for variance that's on your formula sheet. So I have it here as a file I can share, and I'm going to share that formula sheet with you. And hopefully you've printed it out. If you haven't, you need to go find it in the Unit 1 folder. You might need to make this bigger, but you'll see that number 1 is population variance. And number 3 is sample variance. So I want you to look at those two. So we have population variance. And number 3 on the formula sheet is sample variance. Now, this formula sheet is something you're allowed to use while taking test 1. So you really need to print it out. That's why I was saying you might want to get a flash drive. If you don't have a printer at home, you might want to take a flash drive and save this to the flash drive, and then take it up to Office Depot or Staples or something and see if, and ask them to print these things out for you. Kendra? Kendra, Chloe, does Kendra have a question?
Sorry, yeah, sorry, I was unmuted. Okay, I have a question about the test, about one of the formulas.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to go over them all eventually, but today we're just doing the Formula 1 and 3.
So
Right.
this is just one page of the formula? Is that all we will need for the first
This
test?
is the
Or are there
formula
other
sheet.
formulas?
This is all the formulas that you'll need for test 1, except for mean, median, and mode, and those I expect you to know. Okay, so let's go on. I'm going to write the formula for the population variance up here. So we have a formula for population and a formula for sample variance. So while you're looking at it, I'm going to write it down, and then I will unshare this so I can talk about it. So population variance, you'll see it has some weird symbols on it. Okay, so I'm going to unshare so you can look. I wrote, this is the first formula, and I wrote it up on the board so I can talk to you about it. So we're going to look at the population variance, and then we'll look at the sample variance. The formulas are different. When we did population and sample mean, the formulas were the same. The symbols were different. So sample mean was X bar, and just as a reminder, population mean the symbol was mu. And notice here on our formula for population variance, there's a mu there. So that's the population mean right there. Now the symbol for population variance is this symbol right here. It looks sort of like, this is a Greek letter. This is a lowercase sigma. This is an uppercase sigma that looks like an E kind of. That's an uppercase sigma, and it means sum, S-U-M, sum. But this is a lowercase sigma squared. So this, when we read this, it's sigma squared. That's what that symbol, that's the name of that symbol. But it represents the variance of a population. And notice within it, we have a capital sigma. Remember that capital sigma means to find the sum. This X here, those are your data values. And then the capital N, remember, is the population size. So this is why knowing the symbols, this is why I have that symbol sheet for you, because knowing what the symbols mean makes it possible for you to do fill in numbers for this for a formula like this. Now I'm going to do a variance, an example, and show you what this means. But because ours is a sample, remember we had a lowercase n, since ours is a sample, we're going to go back and grab the formula for sample variance off of our formula sheet. So I'm going to go back and share that formula sheet again. And we are going to look at number 3, formula 3, which is the formula for sample variance. So you write that one down. because of space, I'm going to erase the formula for population variance. So the formula you use depends on whether the problem says it is a population or a sample. So while you're writing this down, I'm going to write it down too. So this formula says s squared equals, and it looks a lot the same, like the top is very similar, except instead of mu, there's an x bar. And then you'll notice on the bottom, instead of just having lowercase n, it has lowercase n minus 1. And actually, I'm going to recommend on your formula sheet that you put that n minus 1 in parentheses. So I'm going to do that on here. I'm going to recommend that this little n minus 1, I'm going to see if I can do this while it's up on the, put that in parentheses. Because you need to figure out that one number before you do the division. Okay, I'm going to unshare that now so we can talk about this formula. Kendra, do you have another question? Okay.
I did have another question, but I'm trying to remember what it was.
Okay, well, let's go on. Let's get through this example, and then I'll take questions during the break. Okay, so let's look at this example here. So I just copied, this was formula number 3 on the formula sheet. And let's look at the different parts. So notice, instead of being called little sigma squared, the sample variance is called little s. That's a little s squared. And we still have the capital sigma, which means to do the sum. The x is the same, data values, minus, and this x bar here is the mean of the sample. And then n minus 1. Now we're going to do this for this example. So I want you to notice that we know x bar is right here. X bar is 79.4. We also know little n, that's the sample size right there. So we have little n and we have x bar. So now I'm going to show you the work for finding the sample variance. Now, it's not that this is so hard, but if you have a lot of data values, it's very time consuming. So I will be having you compute variance once on the test, and I will try to pick one that doesn't have very many numbers. That's why I only put 5 numbers here. So I'm going to do, on this example, I'm going to find little s squared. So what I do, remember, I'm going to add up the x minus x bar. So on mine, that becomes this. It becomes the sum of x minus 79.4 squared. And that's going to be divided by n minus 1. So that's 5 minus 1, or 4. Now, let's write down what this means. This means you're going to take each data value, subtract the mean, square that difference, and then add them up. Here's what we're doing here, guys. You might notice this looks a little bit like the formula for mean, because this is kind of a type of average, but what we're averaging here is not the numbers. What we're averaging is the squares of the distances from the mean. So this x minus x bar for each data value that tells us how far it is from the mean. And then we're squaring it so that when it comes out negative, that squaring will give us a positive number. Now it also gives us a bigger number, so we deal with that. We're going to deal with that after the break. But so basically what the variance is it is sort of an average of the distances from the means squared. So that tells us the variance gives us an idea of how spread out the numbers are from the average. So if you can kind of think of the average of 79.4 sitting here in the middle, and I want to know the variance is going to be a measure or a number that tells me how spread out the numbers are from that mean. If the variance is small, that means everything's clustered around the mean. If the variance is big, that means everything is way spread out from the mean. Okay? So we're going to take each data value. So the first data value is 60. We're going to do 60 minus 79.4, and we're going to square it. As we do this, you're going to realize that this looks a lot like some of the skills review problems that we did at the beginning. And I think I'm going to have to scoot more to the left here, or I'm never going to have enough room because I have to do this for all 5 data values. So I'm going to come way to the left here. And the first one, remember, was 60 minus 79.4 squared. That's for this first one. That's my x1 was 60. This means I'm now going to add, and now I'm going to take the second data value of 75, subtract the mean from that, and square it, plus. Now I'm ready to take the third data value of 82, subtract the mean, and square it. I'm running out of room. X4 was 90 minus 79.4 squared. And I'm going to just add this last one on right here because I ran out of room. I need a bigger board. 90, again, minus 79.4 squared. I'm going to take all of that. I'm going to have to do that in the calculator. No way am I going to do that in my head. And I'm going to divide all of that. After I add all those squares together, I'm going to divide by 4. 5 minus 1 is 4. So I'm going to do the work on this. You guys can try it as well. But I'm going to do it with me. So for each data value, so for this first one, I'm actually going to type it in just like that. So I did parentheses 60 minus 79.4, and then I hit my x squared button, and that gives me 376.36. And you'll notice I'm not going to round anything here because this is not my final answer. Plus, now I'm going to go up with my calculator. I can go up and just change the 60 to a 75. That makes it a little bit faster. And then hit equals. And then I'm going to change the 75 to an 82 and hit equals. And I'm going to change the 82 to a 90 and hit equals. And then that last one's going to be the same because it's another 90. And then all of that is going to be divided by 4. Now, let me repeat. This is a complicated computation. I totally agree with that. It's an important computation, but this is one of the harder things we do in the whole semester. So guys, if you can take your time and do this like I'm showing you, and you can get it right on the homework and hopefully on the test, and I'm going to have you show your work on the test on this one so I can give you partial credit. If you can get past variance, you're more or less home free. Everything else is going to seem pretty easy. Now I'm going to add all those numbers up. When I add them all up, I get 627.2, and I did not round anything there. It just ended up that way. And when I divide that by 4, and I've run out of room where I keep working down, and I'm going to divide, I'm leaving that number in my calculator, divide by 4, and I got 156.8. Now, before we take the break, and we're going to finish up this section after the break, but before we take the break, I'm going to point out the rounding rule for variance. The rounding rule for variance is the same as for mean. The rounding rule for the mean was to round one place past the data. Same rounding rule for the variance. So if this had come out to be 156.81, I would still call it 156.8. So let's write the rounding rule here. Round one place past the data. And we talked about what that means last time when we talked about rounding the mean. So, but this is already one place past the data without any rounding, so I'm just done. So the variance of this data set is 156.8. Now that doesn't mean a lot to you right now. The variance isn't the best measure of variation, but what we're going to do after the break is we're going to find the standard deviation, and that one is really important. And the standard deviation comes from the variance. So we have to go through this thing in order to find the thing that's really meaningful, which is the standard deviation. We'll talk about that after the break. During the break, I'm going to upload your homework and quiz average in Blackboard. So now remember, if your account expired in my stat lab, that right now you're going to have a 0 average. So my recommendation is during the break, if you can, get on there and go ahead and get that paid for so that I can look at it. And if you want me to, if you'll email me after you've updated your account or after you've paid for your account, then I will go back and run the numbers again for you and update your homework and quiz average if you want me to. Don't have to. I'm going to do everybody's after test 1. So you can just wait till then. It doesn't really matter. If it says 0 right now, I mean, that's going to update once you pay for the account. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording here for the break.